आपदामपहर्तारं दातारं सर्वसम्पदां लोकाभिरामं श्रीरामं भूयो भूयो नमाम्यहम्. On this auspicious day of Sri Ramanavami, we gather to continue with our study of the Bhagavad Geetā. On this 42nd class on the Geetā with the Shānkara Bhāshya, we carry on with Sthita Prajna Lakshanas. In the last class, we saw the second of the 18 shlokas, namely Dukkeshu Anudvignamanaha Sukheshu Vigataspraha Vitaraga Bhayakrodhaha Stitadhi Muniruchyate. The hallmark of a man or a lady of steady wisdom. Prajna means wisdom here, understanding of the highest truth, and Sthita means steady, unmoving, unshaken, unwavering. The hallmark of someone with that steady wisdom is in circumstances which would throw anybody else off balance. This person stays very, very anchored in inner peace. And in circumstances which would make anybody else get very attached and want more of it, this person is unattached. She or he lets go of that comfort, of that celebration, of that honor or felicitation, or any other wonderful thing without remaining attached to it. That is the meaning of Dukkeshu Anudvignamanaha Sukheshu Vigata Spraha. We move over now to the 57th verse, and more of such description helps us see more of what is involved in arriving at this state of steady wisdom. The 57, the third of the 18 shlokas goes Yassarvatranabhisnehaha tat prapya shubha shubham nabhinandati nadveshti tasya prajna pratishtita. Each phrase, each compound samasa is very thought-provoking. Yaha sarvatra anabhisneha. Sneha itself means attachment. Interestingly, in Sanskrit, sneha also means oil. If a few drops of water fall on your shirt, in a little while they dry and evaporate, disappear. If some oil falls upon your shirt, it sticks. It does not go so easily. Oil is known for a certain quality of sticking. And sneha is oil, sneha is attachment. Abhisneha is powerful attachment. Anabhisneha is this person of highest steady wisdom is free of any strong attachment. She is free of clinging. Anabhisneha. What does it mean? Does she keep away from good people, good places, beautiful food, and so on? No. She neither keeps away from the so-called good things of life, nor does she cling to them, saying, I don't want to part from these. Therefore, how nicely Sri Krishna, the next avatar of Sri Rama in the Dashavataras of Mahavishnu has said, Tat Tat Prapya Shubha Ashubham. This enlightened one gets, like anybody else would do, happy times and sad times. In her life also, there are moments of jubilation and moments of mourning. However, as even the Shubha and Ashubha, good and bad times, come and go, Tat Tat Prapya. The repetition Tat Tat means respectively, sometimes this and sometimes that. Shubha Ashubham Prapya na Abhinandati, does not egoistically get elated, nor na dveshti, does not curse her own or his own stars. Why this happened to me of all people? This ailment, this COVID 19, this accident, this old age could have happened to the neighbor. Why to me? So, when we are egoistic, we think that anyone else can suffer but not us. And why should anyone else enjoy? If any enjoyment were to come about, it should be ours. We should be on the stage. We should be in limelight. Our picture should come in newspapers in good light and so on. That egoistic elation and egoistic depression are absent in this person. That doesn't mean she never smiles. We are never tired of clarifying that she smiles. Why not? She laughs also. Many saints and sages were caught by camera laughing like children, laughing like mad people. Therefore, they do smile, they do laugh, they do weep, they do cry. Yes, it is said when the Dalai Lama was giving a discourse in Dharamshala, MacLeod in Himachal Pradesh, thousands were attending his lecture, and this was many years ago. Somebody came and gave him a slip of paper. And the Dalai Lama, in the middle of a discourse, took that slip of paper and read it. And suddenly his face became grim. And within a few seconds, he began to sob. He began to cry. And then he collected himself. And after a few moments, continued his discourse. Later on, they came to know that the slip of paper that was handed over to him had the news that another 100 Tibetans in Lhasa or nearby in Tibet were massacred by Chinese police or army men. So Dalai Lama did not cry for some personal loss. His bank balance went down or he did not get some honor. Nothing personal. The news of 100 of Tibetans dying, that too being massacred in a barbaric way, filled him with sorrow. Therefore, we add the adjective egoistic elation, egoistic suffering, go away from the enlightened person. Otherwise, like anyone else, an enlightened lady also would enjoy well made food, would enjoy good music, would be in raptures seeing a beautiful sunrise, and so on and so forth. And a number of sad things do sadden her also. Na abhinandati, na dveshti, tasya prajna pratishtita. You want to write a Bhagavad Gita for ladies, you may change Tasyaha Prajna Pratishtita. Tasya means his, Tasyaha means her. But that is not necessary. Wherever in these philosophical works the word Tasya appears, it automatically means his or her. by force of context. Adi Shankara explains this. Kinchayaha Munihi. Adi Shankara is fond of adding a word Muni, Sannyasi, Parivrajaka, and so on, or Yati, and so on. For Adi Shankara does not compromise. In order to arrive at this high state, somebody has to be Muni, Manana Shilaha, very contemplative. You and I, caught in materialistic matters, contemplate at length on things of the world. Even if we have already two houses, suppose there is a prospect of getting a beautiful house in a good area of a nice city at a low price. Say, really? Is that available at such a throwaway price? I think I will buy it. I'll go for it. And time flies as we think about the prospect of our being the owner of yet another very pretty home. Time goes so fast. We are mananashila with respect to material prospects. But do we dwell on God? Do we dwell on spiritual truths with time just flying like that? On Ramanavami, can we try to sit for some time at our convenience during the day, thinking just of Sri Ram? As I played that song by one of those singers, I guess. That lady has been singing for some time, Shobhana Vignesh. I don't know where from she is, but very nicely. Sri Ramachandra Kripalu Bhajumana Harana Bhava Bhaya Darunam Navakanjalochana Kanjamukakara Kanja Padakanjarunam. The beautiful form of Sri Rama. Who is a Muni? Please don't imagine by Muni somebody who doesn't wear enough dress, sits below a tree and a long beard and a depressed face, etc. No, you could be coated, booted, suited, as Pujya Swami Chinmayananji would say, or referring to ladies, Indian ladies. You could be clad in wonderful, what shall I say, Kanjivaram silk sari, Banaras silk sari, or whatever, and bedecked with jewelry, no problem. That doesn't prevent you from being a Muni. You are a Muni when, with all that silk sari and gold on you, your mind is in Sri Rama. As the song by Sri Tulsi Das, it's a piece in his Vinaya Patrika. Tulsidas, apart from writing Ramacharit Manas, which is the entire Ramayana called as Tulsi Ramayana, wrote many other works, and one of them was a collection of more than 200 bhajans, which were put together and called Vinaya Patrika. And one of the poems in Vinaya Patrika is this celebrated song which all celebrities have sung, Lata Mangeshkar and everybody. Sri Ramachandra Kripalu Bhajumana Harana Bhavabhaya Darunam. O my mind, resort to the contemplation of Sri Ramachandra. And towards the end there is a prayer. Mama Hridaya Kanja Nivasa Kuru Kamadi Khaladala Ganjanam. O Rama, come dwell in my heart. And in my heart there are wicked forces, Kama Adi, Kama Krodha Lobha Moha Mada Matsarya, which all of us underestimate. We keep reading about them from childhood, but we imagine, oh, there are no Kama Krodha in me. The Kama Krodha are in everybody else, but not in me. That is how we think. Until life gives us hard knocks and we discover, ayyo, in my heart There are selfish desire, greed, and all. And O Rama, Mama Hridaya Kanja, my heart also is a Kanja, a lotus. Nivasa Kuru, please dwell here in my heart, lotus. And Khala Dala, that host of wicked ones. Khala means wicked fellow. Kama Adi Khala Dala Ganjanam, destroy them, right? So if you and I not just sing or read, but apply our mind to that divine contemplation, we are Muni. And when we are Munis, some loss here or some gain there, some praise here and some insult there will not mean much to us. Then, Sarvatra Deha Jivanadishu Api, the height of our detachment, independence, total inner freedom would be such that if we were to die, not that we want to die, but if we were to die for some unforeseen reasons, we say, well, it's time to go, let's go. Jivanadishu api anabhisneha, not clinging to life also. You may imagine that must be a terrific high state of consciousness. Not to be concerned with property here or bank balance there, not to be attached to some friendship here, some support there, etc. Itself is difficult for us. We want to keep everything that is close to our heart, so close to us. Even if somebody who is a good friend steps back by 2 feet, we are agitated. Why did she not even smile at me yesterday in the gathering in that party? Something fishy, and so on. We get agitated. Here is a Muni who understands some have left me, some new ones have come to me, some money I lost, but some money has come. She is aware, he is aware of all of that, but inwardly not overly attached. And therefore, anabhisneha. Abhisneha is strong attachment. Anabhisneha, no attachment. This is a tightrope walk. I'm sure everybody among you has a doubt. If we are not attached to what we are doing, will there be no enthusiasm? Will not the steam go out of our enterprises? I guess when we take up some work, we have to be headlong into it, as though nothing else exists in life. If a CEO of a company reads Bhagavad Gita and says, well, if my company goes down the drain, so what? If my company makes profits, well, so what? Is it not a negative state of mind? So we say, be careful, don't misunderstand Gita. A CEO who studies Gita will put in as much enthusiastic effort as somebody attached to everything. But inwardly, there is a greater wealth of which she or he is aware. I am not saying this. In the next chapter, you will find Sri Krishna himself saying, Saktaha karmani avidvansaha yatha kurvanti bharata kuryad vidvan tata asaktaha chikirshur loka sangraham. Just as people in the world, very attached to success and money and fame, etc., work day and night, an enlightened person also, asakta, unattached person also has to work hard, will work hard, why not? But then what drives this unattached person? She works hard out of love, out of love for people, out of love for a cause, out of the insight that if I do this, 100 hungry stomachs will be filled with food. If I do this, so many get employment. If I work hard and develop this enterprise, a lot of talented people will not only have good jobs, they will further contribute to the wealth of the society, to the well-being of the society, and I'm interested in our society, our town being prosperous, where there is justice, where there is beauty, where people are living in a healthy way. Towards that, my enterprise, whether it is a material enterprise or for that matter, even spiritual enterprises. Why did Swami Chinmayananda work day and night? In 1970, he had a heart attack when he was in Mysore, but without surgery, he recovered, but he was hospitalized for a number of days. In 1980, a more severe heart issue, and those days, heart bypass, open heart surgery was not very common. So, a famous heart surgeon, Denton Cooley, in Houston, Texas, United States, conducted an open heart surgery, 3 bypasses on the heart of Swami Chinmayananda. And everybody said, after this triple bypass surgery, Swamiji is going to step down and probably hand over to one of his senior disciples. He will probably just stay in his Bombay ashram, meet people for a few hours, slow down, and just give some advice from a distance, etc., etc. But in fact, interestingly, 1980 is when I even heard about him, got to know about him, and met him also in Chennai. So where everybody said he was going to step down, I had an opportunity to meet him in that year. Before that, I had not heard his name also. August 1980, I saw his book Kindle Live in a room, in a dormitory, and rest is, wonderful. So, in the following 13 years, Puja Swami Chinmayananji worked as hard as ever before. I have seen him starting the day morning 4:30 or so with a lot of correspondence, instructions, letters he received would have a remark, and with his reply it would go to different parts of India or abroad, and he would hold a class maybe at 6:30 or 7. But before holding the morning class, the Swami would have worked already 4 hours. That was, very, very inspiring to all of us. So he worked very hard. Therefore, he lived the Gita's teaching. To quote once more, chapter 3 says, Saktaha karmani avidvamsaha yatha kurvanti bharata kuryad vidvans tata asaktaha chikirshur loka sangraham. Swamiji was asakta. He didn't have anything to gain personally for himself, but he saw the worthiness of the work, the worthiness of his projects, the worthiness of his spiritual enterprise. His was not a startup in Silicon Valley for corporate, goals. His was a spiritual enterprise. And I remember Peter Drucker, the famous management guru, had said, even non-profit organizations have to work like business houses do. And we saw that in Swami Chinmayananda. People like me have to learn a lot from him and work in the spiritual field also with the energy, enthusiasm, speed, etc., which sometimes we lack because we mistake the philosophy for sitting behind calmly. Calmness is inward, outwardly, we have to work. Therefore, friends, do not mistake this anabhisneha or abhisneha varjitaha to be losing interest in the right, efficient, effective functioning of various enterprises of yours. Tat tat shubham ashubham va prapya. Again, on this Ramanavami day, we may remember how Sri Rama, one evening, the whole Ayodhya is decorated because next morning he is going to be coronated as the crown prince, Yuvaraja. which practically meant he would be ruling the kingdom. But next morning, the tables are turned. He has to go to 14 years to the forest. What a dramatic change. Rather than being placed on the throne as virtually the king, though literally the crown prince, he has to now go to the jungle, and not for 14 days quarantine, but 14 years of Vanavasa. So again, Tulsidas comes into the picture. One of the Sanskrit Mangalacharana, he writes in his Hindi or Audi Tulsi Ramayan. Most of you who have taken a look at Tulsi Ramayan know that every Khanda or every Kanda, Balakanda, Ayodhya Kanda, etc., begins with a Sanskrit shloka, one or two shlokas. So he says, the Shubha Shubham Prapya Nabhinandati Nadveshti. He says, Sri Rama displayed that calm face. You know, he says, Prasannatam yana gata abhishekatah tathanamamle vanavasa dukkatah mukambuja shri raghunandanasya me sadastu sa mangala manjula prada. He is a prarthana shloka, which simply means, may that face, that auspicious face of Sri Rama always bless me. Which face is that? The face that did not swell with pride when it was announced that he would be the crown prince of Ayodhya, and that face which the next day did not fade like a flower that fades away upon getting the news that he has to go to Vanavasa. So, prasannatam ya nagata tata na mamle. Sri Tulsidas describes, that is the teaching here, Shubham Ashubham cha. For students of grammar, Shubha and Ashubha, when you put together, Shubha Shubhe, regular Dvandva Samasa. But Shubha Shubham is what is called Samahara Dvandva. Though there are two, Shubha and Ashubha, the compound also is in singular. If the compound goes to dual, dvivachana, it is called itaretara dvandva. Ramascha Krishnascha Ramakrishna. So much grammar would make one or two not come next class. So we will only make passing references to grammar. So Shubha Shubham Prapya na Abhinandati. Adi Shankara says Shubham Ashubham va Prapya Labdva na Abhinandati na Dveshti. Inwardly calm, outwardly, yes, whatever is appropriate, whatever is in fitness of things. If your grandson comes running to you saying, Grandma, I got a trophy, you might have read any amount of Vedanta, but you would really show much happiness. Not just pretend you are happy. You will take your grandchild on your lap and say, Well done, beta, well done, my child, and so on, with as much happiness as any worldly grandmother would do. But inwardly, how do we know you are okay inwardly? Next moment, when the child runs away, you get back to some sadhana. Maybe you are doing japa. The child comes, you give a pat to the child goes away. You say, good. Again, back to the japamala, Sri Ram, Jai Ram, and so on. The ability to move on, pleasure or pain, is the hallmark of someone who is not attached. Shubham prapya na tushyati, na hrishyati, tushyati, hrishyati, etc. are synonyms of being egoistically elated. The hallmark of ego is comparison. My grandchild won and his grandchild failed. See, that is the contrast. My children, my grandchildren, everything mine is so wonderful, and his or her people, family are all down. That is called ego. The ego shows itself in comparison. shows itself in presenting oneself as superior, or in bad times, the ego hurts us very badly, saying, everybody got it, I did not get it. Everybody made it, I lagged behind. Everybody is now so famous, but nobody talks about me, ooh, and so on. So that others won and I did not, causing pain, and others lost and I won, causing happiness, is the hallmark of that separate self. So one has to discern what is ego and what is natural happiness. Tasya evam harsha vishada varjitasya vivekaja prajna pratishtita bhavati. On one hand, such a person, harsha vishada varjita, is devoid of either elation, feeling great, or feeling low, vishada. On the other, that prajna, that understanding is born not of just willpower, deciding to remain same, that won't go far. That is born of viveka, a seeing that egoistic ups and downs are fraught with pain, are fraught with continued bondage. We got to choose freedom over bondage. So, whatever causes bondage to us, psychological processes, whatever thoughts upon indulging more and more in them cause continued bondage, have to be seen for what they are, and we have to let go of them. That is Viveka. Then comes the famous illustration in Bhagavad Gita. You have number of illustrations. If somebody among you wants a mini project on Bhagavad Gita, a big project is difficult. A mini project, like colleges have major project at the end of the year or something that goes all through the year, and mini projects which are done within a month and handed over to the instructors. If you want a mini project, go through the Gita, collect all the illustrations. Like here, the tortoise withdrawing its limbs. Somewhere else, in this very Sita Prajna Lakshana, we have a boat losing its direction and getting swayed, getting pulled or dragged in dangerous directions on the sea, on the river. And there is also the illustration of the sea maintaining its level no matter how much the water rivers bring to it or how much water rivers take away from it. And in other chapters, you have an illustration, for example, the meditator's mind is like a unflickering flame of a lamp in a windless spot. And all the way till the 18th chapter, Bhagavan Sri Krishna supplies illustrations after illustrations. In the 18th chapter, he says, no matter what work you do in life, it is all with some imperfection. There is nothing like perfect work. Work is necessarily with some imperfection, some damage, some hurt. Somebody would be hurt in any work. And he gives the illustration just as you light up some fire, take some wood and light up some fire, and you say, I just want fire, I don't want any smoke. Impossible. Just as fire has some smoke, all work, corporate enterprises, as I said, Silicon Valley startup will have its own pain, hurt, damage. Somebody will cry, somebody will suffer. But if on the whole the good overweighs the bad, you must go for it. And spiritual enterprises too. Build an ashram, it has its own hassles, it has its own pain, it has its own. It will bring to you sleepless nights. You start a mission, or want to write a book on Gita. Anything you take up, there will be some suffering, some pain to you and to some others also. But Sri Krishna says, Sahajam karma kaunteya sadoshamapi na tyajet. Though there may be some downside to some enterprises, if you feel that's your swadharma, if you see more good in it and a little bad in it, go ahead seeing the good of that enterprise. And this illustration he gives to wind up that reference is Dhumena Agnihi Iva Avrutam. Sahajam karma kaunteya sadoshamapi natyajed sarvarambāhi doshena dhumena agnihi iva avrutaha. Sarve arambaha doshena avrutaha yatha agnihi dhumena avrutaha. Illustrations. So put all the illustration together. Don't send them to me. Don't add to my work. Write the illustration, tortoise and its limbs. Write only 50 words, not more. 50 words explaining what that tortoise and the limbs conveys in Gita. That's all. It should be precise. So let's see what Sri Krishna says. Yada samharate chayam kūrmōngāni va sarvashah indriyāni indriyārthebhyah tasya prajna pratishtita. Kūrmaha is the tortoise or the tortoise, whatever way you pronounce. In America, they say tortoise. So, just as a tortoise, samharate, withdraws, pulls into its own shell, its four legs, at the slightest sign of danger, as the tortoise is moving, let's say in the jungle, tuck, some sound it hears. That's enough. Tuck, immediately it withdraws the limbs. Tortoise does it out of fear. Please do not misunderstand this example, saying that, okay, the enlightened man also is always afraid. If a pretty woman comes, immediately he starts looking in another direction or runs away from the place. That's not the idea. That is stretching the example beyond the appropriate limits. What is meant here is, just as the tortoise, Kurmaha, has the ability to withdraw its limbs at will whenever it wants. It may do out of fear, but enlightened person doesn't do out of fear. The enlightened person withdraws his sense organs out of clear viveka. He knows that what they are proposing is waste of time. What they are calling me to is a mere indulgence. It doesn't do any good to me. So mere pleasure, mere enjoyment, mere gossip, all kinds of waste of time. Sometimes not just waste of time, it harms, it hurts. It may weaken us physically, emotionally, or intellectually, spiritually. One of the powerful statements of Vivekananda in one of his lectures was, reject that as poison which weakens you physically, emotionally, or spiritually. So, it is out of vision, insight, prajna or viveka, or what you call pratipaksha bhavana. Ordinarily, the world will show to us one paksha, one side. Buy that property. In 5 years, it's going to cost 20 times more than the present price. Go, stop Gita classes for a few days, buy that house and then return to your Bhagavad Gita study. That's how the world says. But you, who already has a nice house, a happy family, you are already all right, pretty good. And what is more, your goal of life is something different, not just acquiring property. It's not your swadharma. If your swadharma is to acquire property, then maybe give to some worthy people. That's a different. We are not against buying 2, 3, 4, or 5 houses. There is no rule about how much wealth one must have. You could have a lot of wealth and yet be very spiritual. That's a different issue. While the world shows you the bright side of just pleasure, you see other side or the opposite side. How so much time, so much energy, so much conflict, and sometimes in the process of your making more money, you lose some good friendships, or you hit on the stomach, as the saying goes, on some poor man. He was trying to buy it, and you gave a few lakhs more and you bought it. That person has no house at all. He was all set to buy that, and you denied to somebody who would have found his own roof over his head, so etc. There is Sarva Arambha, as already I said. That's called Pratipaksha. In Bhaja Govindam, about money, about pleasure, about power, about youthfulness, about position, everything. Bhaja Govindam awakens us to see the other side. Pratipaksha Bhavana. Nari stana bhara nabhidesham दृष्ट्वा मागा मोहावेशम एतन्मांसवसादिविकारं मनसि विचिन्तय वारं वारं varam varam, bar bar, again and again. See the pratipaksha, the other side, negative side. Then you will have a balanced outlook. Things of the world have a bright side, we don't deny, but they have a downside also. If you are aware of both, then your judgments would be very good. So, the wise lady or man withdraws his or her senses, not out of fear, but out of seeing the pratipaksha. Pratipaksha bhavana. Indriyani indriyartebhya. The tortoise withdraws its limbs, and the wise person withdraws her sense organs, indriyani, from objects of the senses. Shankara gives a simple commentary. Kincha further, yada samharate, samyak upasamharate. It's called upasamhara. Samhara somewhere else may mean destruction. In fact, somewhere else, samhara, I myself did not know till a few years ago, can be as simple as, you know, tying together. Somebody in Sanskrit wrote a whole work called Veni Samhara. And though I had studied some Sanskrit in high school, etc., later on in ashrams, I studied a lot of Sanskrit related to scriptures. I did not understand even the title of Veni Samhara. Finally, I asked Professor Iyengar in our Bangalore, what is this Veni Samhara? Because for me, Samhara meant only destruction of this demon or that demon. He laughed and said, Veni Samhara is nothing but, Veni is the locks of hair that Draupadi had. And, without going long on it, Draupadi opens all her locks of hair and says, until Duryodhana and Dushasana are all taught a lesson, I will not tie my hair again. So, when the Mahabharata war gets over and Dushasana, Duryodhana all are killed, uh, she, I think, takes their blood and puts on her hair rather than oil, and then she ties her, those plates or what you call them, Pleats. Pleats, oh, thank you, pleats. It's always good to have an elderly wise person by the side. Pleats, pleats, pleats. So to tie the hair into pleats. So that is samhara. That is what was scattered, you put together. You put together, and that is samhara. And somewhere else, yes, Ravana samhara, destroying. And here it is neither destruction nor tying together the hair. Veni samhara. Veni is the pleats or Draupadi's hair is meant. Shankara says, upasamharate. Jnana nishtayam pravrittaha. Good news for all of us. It need not be enlightened person only. You and I on the path of contemplation and studying ourselves, making ourselves steady on the path of wisdom. Yatihi. someone of great self-control. Yatha kurmaha angani. Kurma does bhayat. Adi Shankara clarifies. Yes, the tortoise withdraws the limbs out of fear. Bhayat swani angani upasamharati. Jnananishtaha sarva vishayebhyaha upasamharate. Vivekataha I have added. Tasya prajna pratishtita. Iti uktartham vakyam. Thus is the statement, the meaning of which has already been given. Self-control. Interestingly, as we will remark in future too, these 18 shlokas again and again emphasize on Indriya Sanyama. Because Indriya Sanyama is the first sign of anybody having Viveka. If someone does not have Viveka, that person begins to make compromises, starting with sense indulgence. And then that spoils his or her health, then mental health, then viveka, one by one, everything goes away. So on this 9th day of Shukla Paksha of Chaitra, Ramanavami, on this 9th Navami, therefore Navami means 9th day, we are seeing 9 into 2, 18 shlokas of Sthita Prajna Lakshana of Bhagavad Geetā, Sri Krishna's. Rama was born on 9th day, Krishna gave 18 chapters of Gita. Sri Krishna always tried to overtake Rama. Anyway, we will not make that an issue. Sri Krishna is considered Purna Avatar. Rama was the same, but he displayed less of the majestic powers of Mahavishnu. Sri Krishna displayed, both of them had equal powers, both of them were Vishnu and nothing less. But Sri Krishna displayed, exhibited, showed, presented to everybody who had the eyes to see. So that was Sri Krishna. Now Sri Rama, Lord Sri Rama, bless everyone on this great work, great spiritual sadhana of Gita Adhyayana. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Sri Ramachandra Swamine Namaha.